If you're ready to dive into one of the most disturbing, unsolved mysteries in modern history, then smash that subscribe button right now, hit the bell so you never miss a case that'll haunt you for days, and drop a comment telling me if you think this was murder or something far more sinister. Let's get into it. February 19th, 2013. Downtown Los Angeles. The Cecil Hotel. When maintenance worker Santiago Lopez climbed the rusted ladder to the hotel's rooftop water tanks that Tuesday morning, he had no idea he was about to make a discovery that would send shockwaves around the world. Guests had been complaining for days. The water pressure was weak. The color was off, a murky brownish tint that made stomachs turn. Some said it tasted strange, metallic, wrong. Santiago's job was simple. Check the tanks, find the problem, fix it. But nothing about what he found was simple. The Cecil Hotel stood like a decaying monument in one of LA's most dangerous neighborhoods, Skid Row. Built in 1927, the hotel had witnessed more death than most morgues. Serial killers had walked its halls. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, had stayed there during his killing spree in the 80s. Jack Unterweger, an Austrian journalist and convicted murderer, had used it as his base while strangling prostitutes across Los Angeles. Suicides were so common that the hotel's windows had been retrofitted with bars and safety measures. The Cecil wasn't just a hotel. It was a graveyard with a front desk. On January 31st, 2013, a 21-year-old Canadian student named Elisa Lam checked into room 506. She was traveling alone, documenting her West Coast journey through blog posts and photos. Friends and family described her as bright, adventurous, and deeply thoughtful. She had battled depression and bipolar disorder, but was managing well with medication. Her trip was supposed to be a celebration of her progress, a solo adventure to find herself. But Elisa never checked out. By February 1st, she had missed several scheduled calls with her parents. They contacted the LAPD immediately. On February 6th, officers launched a search of the Cecil Hotel. They combed through her room, finding her personal belongings untouched. Her luggage, her laptop, her phone, all still there. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. The front desk staff couldn't recall seeing her leave. No one remembered anything unusual. Security footage was reviewed. Witnesses were questioned. Nothing. Then, on February 14th, the LAPD released a piece of evidence that would become one of the most unsettling videos ever circulated online. Elevator surveillance footage from the last known sighting of Elisa Lam. The video showed Elisa entering the elevator alone, pressing multiple floor buttons in rapid succession. The elevator doors never closed. She stepped in and out of the frame, her movements erratic and strange. At one point, she pressed herself into the corner as if hiding from someone. Then she stepped outside the elevator, waving her hands in exaggerated gestures, talking to someone who wasn't there. Or someone the camera couldn't see. Her fingers moved oddly, almost ritualistic. She peered down the hallway, then jumped back into the elevator. Still, the doors wouldn't close. After 4 agonizing minutes, she disappeared from view. Moments later, the elevator doors finally shut and the car began moving. The internet exploded. Millions watched the footage, dissecting every frame. Was she running from someone? Was she hallucinating? Was she playing a game? Theories ranged from paranormal possession to drug-induced psychosis to human trafficking. The Cecil Hotel's dark history only fueled the fire. Some believed the hotel itself was cursed. But the police had nothing. No suspects. No leads. No body. Until February 19th. Santiago Lopez pried open the heavy lid of the rooftop water tank. The smell hit him first, sharp and rancid, a stench that clawed into his lungs. He peered inside, and his blood turned to ice. Floating in the murky water, her body bloated and pale, was Elisa Lam. She had been dead for weeks. And the hotel guests, hundreds of them, had been drinking, showering, and brushing their teeth with water from her tomb. The LAPD swarmed the rooftop. Crime scene investigators cordoned off the area. The tank was drained, and Elisa's body was carefully removed. An autopsy was ordered immediately. The medical examiner found no signs of physical trauma. No stab wounds, no gunshot wounds, no evidence of a struggle. Toxicology reports came back showing only trace amounts of her prescribed medications, levels lower than expected if she had been taking them regularly. The official cause of death was listed as accidental drowning, but that ruling raised more questions than it answered. How did Elisa Lam, a young woman with no athletic training, access a rooftop that required climbing a locked fire escape? How did she open the heavy, secured hatch of a water tank that even experienced workers struggled with? Why was she found naked, her clothes floating beside her in the water? And most disturbing of all, why did she stop taking her medication? Detectives retraced her final days. They interviewed hotel staff, guests, and anyone who had interacted with her. A bookstore clerk remembered her buying gifts for her family. She seemed happy, coherent, normal. A hostel manager from an earlier stop in her trip recalled her being friendly and talkative. There were no red flags, no signs of suicidal ideation. But there were inconsistencies. Hotel employees mentioned seeing her talking to herself in the lobby. One housekeeper claimed Elisa had complained about strange noises in her room, about feeling watched. Another guest reported hearing loud arguments coming from her floor, though Elisa was supposedly alone. And then there was the elevator footage, a piece of evidence that refused to make sense no matter how many experts analyzed it. Investigators requested the full, unedited security footage from the Cecil Hotel. They wanted every camera angle, every timestamp, every piece of digital evidence. The hotel complied, but something was wrong. Hours of footage were missing. Critical timestamps around Elisa's disappearance had been erased or corrupted. The hotel claimed it was a technical malfunction. The LAPD wasn't convinced. And then a chilling detail emerged. On the day Elisa's body was discovered, a hotel employee came forward with information that had been overlooked. On the night of January 31st, the same night Elisa checked in, another guest had been escorted out of the hotel by security. A man in his mid-30s, agitated and aggressive, was removed from the premises after allegedly harassing female guests. His name was never recorded. His room number was never logged. Security footage of the incident was part of the missing files. The lead detective assigned to the case, a 20-year veteran named Marcus Delgado, stared at the case board in the LAPD headquarters. Photos of Elisa, maps of the hotel, timelines, witness statements, all pinned and connected with red string. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was being hidden, that someone knew more than they were saying. But when they opened the locked basement door of the Cecil Hotel, looking for additional security footage archives, what they found changed everything. The basement of the Cecil Hotel was a place most employees avoided. A labyrinth of narrow corridors, rusted pipes, and rooms that hadn't been opened in decades. The air was thick with mold and decay, and the flickering fluorescent lights cast shadows that seemed to move on their own. Detective Marcus Delgado led a team of 3 officers down the concrete steps, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. They were looking for the hotel's archived security footage, backup hard drives that might contain the missing hours from the night Elisa Lam disappeared. What they found instead was a room that shouldn't have existed. Hidden behind a false wall in the sub-basement, accessible only through a maintenance tunnel, was a small space roughly 10 feet by 12 feet. The door had no official marking, no number, no record in the hotel's blueprints. When they forced it open, the smell of chemicals and something else, something organic and rotting, poured out. Inside, the walls were covered with photographs. Hundreds of them. Polaroids and printed images, all of young women. Some were candid shots, taken without the subjects knowing. Women walking down the street, sitting in cafes, entering the Cecil Hotel. Others were more disturbing. Close-ups taken through windows, images of women sleeping, photos taken inside hotel rooms. And there, among the sea of faces, was Elisa Lam. Detective Delgado's hand instinctively moved to his weapon. The photograph of Elisa had been taken inside the Cecil Hotel lobby, just hours before her disappearance. She was standing at the front desk, smiling, unaware she was being watched. Someone had circled her face in red marker. Beneath the photo, scrawled in jagged handwriting, were the words, "Number 23." The room contained more than photographs. A small desk held notebooks filled with dates, times, and room numbers. A detailed log of female guests who had stayed at the Cecil Hotel over the past 6 months. Each entry included physical descriptions, arrival and departure dates, and notes about their behavior. Some entries were marked with a red X. Others had check marks. Elisa Lam's name appeared on the most recent page, dated January 31st, with the notation, "Alone." Perfect. On a shelf above the desk sat a collection of personal items. Jewelry, hair clips, a scarf, a hotel key card, all trophies taken from victims. And tucked in the corner, partially hidden beneath a tarp, was a laptop connected to an external hard drive. The officers immediately called for the forensics team. While they waited, Detective Delgado examined the notebooks more carefully. The handwriting changed throughout the pages, suggesting either multiple authors or someone whose mental state was deteriorating. Some entries were clinical and organized. Others devolved into paranoid rants about being watched, about voices in the walls, about the hotel itself demanding sacrifices. One entry, dated 3 days before Elisa's disappearance, read, "The elevator knows. It chooses them. It brings them to me." The forensics team arrived within the hour. They carefully bagged and cataloged every piece of evidence, photographed the room from every angle, and seized the laptop. Back at the station, a digital forensics specialist named Rachel Chin began the painstaking process of recovering data from the hard drive. What she found made her hands shake. The hard drive contained the missing security footage from the Cecil Hotel, but it also contained something far more sinister. Hidden folders filled with videos, all filmed inside the hotel, all showing women who had no idea they were being recorded. Some footage was from hallway cameras. Other videos appeared to be from cameras hidden in rooms. The timestamps stretched back over 2 years. And then Rachel found the file labeled EL_final. The video began with footage of Elisa Lam in the elevator, the same clip the LAPD had released to the public. But this version continued beyond the 4 minutes that had been shown. After Elisa disappeared from the elevator frame, the camera angle switched. Someone had spliced in footage from a different camera, one that showed the hallway on the 14th floor. Elisa emerged from the elevator, looking disoriented and frightened. She walked quickly down the corridor, glancing over her shoulder repeatedly. Then a figure appeared in the frame, following her. The video quality was poor, the lighting dim, but the figure was unmistakably male, wearing a maintenance uniform with a Cecil Hotel logo. Elisa reached the end of the hallway and pushed open the door to the stairwell. The man followed. The footage cut to a rooftop camera, time-stamped 11:47 p.m. on January 31st. Elisa emerged onto the roof, breathing heavily, clearly in distress. She looked around frantically, trying to find a way down. The man in the maintenance uniform stepped through the door behind her. He moved slowly, methodically, blocking her path to the exit. The video ended abruptly. Detective Delgado immediately pulled personnel records for every maintenance worker employed by the Cecil Hotel in January 2013. There were 7. 6 had solid alibis for the night of Elisa's disappearance. The 7th, a man named David Marino, had called in sick on February 1st and hadn't returned to work since. His employee file was thin. He had been hired 4 months earlier, in October 2012, with minimal background checks. His previous address was listed as a motel in Long Beach. His emergency contact was blank. A warrant was issued for David Marino's arrest. Officers were dispatched to his last known address. The motel manager confirmed that Marino had checked out on February 2nd, the day after Elisa disappeared, and left no forwarding information. His room had been paid for in cash. No credit card, no paper trail, nothing. It was as if he had evaporated. But Detective Delgado wasn't ready to give up. He assigned a team to track Marino's movements before he vanished. They pulled traffic camera footage, interviewed neighbors, and contacted nearby businesses. A gas station attendant remembered Marino purchasing snacks and energy drinks late at night, always paying cash, always avoiding eye contact. A bartender at a dive bar 2 blocks from the Cecil recalled serving him several times. He described Marino as quiet, intense, and fixated on a laptop he always brought with him. Then came the break they needed. A pawnshop owner in East LA recognized Marino's photo. He had come in on February 3rd trying to sell a camera, a high-end model used for surveillance work. The pawnshop owner had refused the purchase because Marino couldn't provide proof of ownership, but he remembered the encounter clearly. Marino had been agitated, sweating profusely, muttering about needing to disappear. The owner had written down the license plate number of Marino's vehicle, an old gray Honda Civic, as a precaution. The LAPD ran the plates. The car was registered to a woman named Angela Marino, David's sister, living in San Diego. Officers made contact with her immediately. Angela Marino was cooperative, but visibly shaken. She confirmed that her brother had struggled with mental health issues for years, including paranoid delusions and obsessive behaviors. She hadn't seen or heard from him since early February. He had called her once around February 5th, rambling about being followed, about the hotel knowing too much, about having to finish what he started. Then the line went dead. She filed a missing person report, but nothing came of it. Detective Delgado asked Angela if her brother had ever mentioned Elisa Lam or the Cecil Hotel specifically. She hesitated, then retrieved a shoebox from her closet. Inside were letters David had sent her over the years, most of them incoherent and disturbing. But one letter, dated January 15, 2013, stood out. In it, David wrote about his job at the Cecil Hotel, about how the building spoke to him, about how it showed him which guests were chosen. He mentioned a game he liked to play, watching people through the cameras, predicting who would leave and who would stay forever. The final line of the letter made Angela's voice crack as she read it aloud. The next one will be special. The hotel has already shown me her face. But just as the task force began coordinating a nationwide manhunt for David Marino, a call came through to the precinct that turned the entire investigation on its head. A hiker in the Angeles National Forest had discovered a vehicle matching the description of Marino's Honda Civic, abandoned on a remote trail 40 miles outside Los Angeles. Inside the car, investigators found Marino's wallet, his phone, and a handwritten confession detailing his obsession with Elisa Lam. But David Marino's body was nowhere to be found, and the confession raised a terrifying question that no one wanted to answer. If Marino disappeared before Elisa's body was discovered, how did he know exactly where she would be found? The confession found in David Marino's abandoned car was 8 pages long, written in frantic, barely legible handwriting that deteriorated with each page. Detective Delgado read it 3 times, each pass revealing new layers of horror that made his stomach turn. Marino described in disturbing detail his obsession with Elisa Lam, how he had watched her through the hotel's security cameras from the moment she checked in, how he had followed her movements through the hallways, how he had planned to make her disappear. But it was page 7 that made Delgado's blood run cold. Marino wrote about the water tank on the roof, about how it was the perfect place, about how no one would find her for weeks. He described the weight of the tank's hatch, the darkness inside, the cold water. He knew details that only someone who had been there could know. Details that hadn't been released to the public. The confession seemed ironclad, a guilty man's final admission before fleeing into the wilderness. Except for one impossible problem. The forensic timeline didn't match. According to the medical examiner's revised report, based on the body's decomposition and water temperature, Elisa Lam had died sometime in the early morning hours of February 1st, likely between 2 o'clock and 4 a.m. But hotel timestamped records showed that David Marino had clocked out of his maintenance shift at 10 p.m. on January 31st and never returned to the building. Security footage from the employee entrance confirmed he had left the premises. Traffic cameras captured his Honda Civic heading eastbound on Sunset Boulevard at 10:17 p.m., miles away from the Cecil Hotel. The rooftop access alarm logs told another story entirely. The door to the roof had been opened exactly once during the critical window, at 3:23 a.m. on February 1st. But the access code used didn't belong to David Marino. It belonged to someone else entirely. Martin Rosales, the night manager. Detective Delgado immediately brought Rosales in for questioning. The man was 52 years old, had worked at the Cecil Hotel for nearly 15 years, and had a spotless record. He seemed genuinely confused by the accusation. Yes, he confirmed, he had accessed the roof that night, but only because the alarm system had malfunctioned and he needed to reset it manually. He was up there for less than 5 minutes. He saw nothing unusual. No Elisa Lam. No one else. Just the empty rooftop and the water tanks. But when pressed about the malfunctioning alarm, Rosales couldn't produce any maintenance report or work order. He claimed he had fixed it himself and forgot to log it. The story was plausible, almost too plausible. Delgado ordered a full background check on Rosales, subpoenaed his financial records, and placed him under surveillance. Meanwhile, the search for David Marino intensified. K-9 units combed the Angeles National Forest. His photo was distributed to every law enforcement agency in the state. The FBI was brought in to assist. But weeks turned into months, and Marino remained a ghost. His bank accounts went untouched. His phone never pinged another cell tower. It was as if he had walked into the forest and ceased to exist. Then, on April 8, 2013, a shocking development emerged from the digital forensics lab. Rachel Chen had been meticulously analyzing the metadata from the videos found on Marino's laptop. Each file contained embedded information: date created, date modified, device identifiers. What she discovered shattered the entire narrative. The video file labeled EL_final, the one showing Elisa being followed to the roof, had been created on February 14, 2013, 2 weeks after Elisa's death. The footage itself appeared to be authentic, pulled from the hotel's security system, but someone had edited it, spliced it together, and saved it to Marino's hard drive long after Elisa's body had been discovered. Someone had deliberately framed David Marino. Detective Delgado returned to the Cecil Hotel with a warrant to seize all remaining security equipment and interview every employee again. This time, he focused on Martin Rosales with laser precision. He pulled 15 years of employment records, incident reports, guest complaints, anything that might reveal a pattern. And there it was, hidden in plain sight. Over the past decade, 7 women had gone missing or died under suspicious circumstances while staying at the Cecil Hotel. All 7 cases had been ruled accidents or suicides. All 7 had occurred during shifts when Martin Rosales was the manager on duty. And in each case, Rosales had been the one to discover the body or report the disappearance. Delgado brought Rosales back to the station, this time with an arrest warrant. During interrogation, Rosales maintained his innocence for 6 hours. He denied knowing David Marino beyond their professional interaction at the hotel. He denied tampering with evidence. He denied everything, until Detective Delgado placed a photograph on the table. It was one of the images found in the hidden basement room, a Polaroid of a young woman who had died at the Cecil Hotel in 2009. On the back of the photo, barely visible, was a fingerprint. Martin Rosales' fingerprint. The facade crumbled. Rosales confessed to creating the hidden room, to collecting the photographs, to watching the female guests through hidden cameras he had installed throughout the hotel over the years. But he adamantly denied killing anyone. He claimed he was just a voyeur, a watcher, nothing more. He admitted to knowing about David Marino's obsession with Elisa Lam because he had discovered Marino's surveillance activities and used them to his advantage. When Elisa died, Rosales saw an opportunity to frame Marino and deflect suspicion from himself. But Detective Delgado wasn't buying it. He pressed harder. How did Elisa Lam end up in the water tank? Who put her there? The medical examiner confirmed she couldn't have climbed in herself, given the physical impossibility of opening the hatch from the outside without assistance. Rosales' hands trembled. Sweat poured down his face. And then he said something that would haunt everyone in that interrogation room for the rest of their lives. I didn't put her in the tank. She was already there when I went to the roof. I just closed the hatch. The room fell silent. Rosales explained that he had seen Elisa on the rooftop cameras, behaving erratically, clearly in the middle of a mental health crisis. She had somehow managed to open one of the tank hatches, perhaps standing on a ladder that maintenance had left there during repairs earlier that week. In her confused state, she had climbed inside, possibly thinking it was a way down or searching for a place to hide. Rosales had gone to the roof, seen the open hatch, heard splashing inside, and made a choice. Instead of calling for help, instead of pulling her out, he sealed the tank shut. He let her drown.
Why?
Delgado demanded. Why didn't you save her? Rosales looked up with hollow eyes. Because if she lived, she would have talked. She would have told people about the cameras, about what she saw in the hallways, about the room in the basement. She had found things she wasn't supposed to find. The hotel needed her gone. The confession was enough. Martin Rosales was charged with second-degree murder, evidence tampering, voyeurism, and multiple counts of invasion of privacy. As investigators dug deeper into his activities, they discovered that at least 3 of the 7 previous deaths at the Cecil Hotel had likely been murders staged to look like suicides, all orchestrated by Rosales to protect his secret surveillance operation. But the case of David Marino remained unsolved. His body was never found. Some investigators believed he had committed suicide in the forest, consumed by guilt over his obsession. Others thought he had fled the country, living under a false identity. A few whispered that perhaps Rosales had killed him too, eliminating a loose end before framing him. The Cecil Hotel closed its doors in 2017 and was renovated into affordable housing. The water tanks were removed. The hidden basement room was demolished. But the story of Elisa Lam refused to die. In late 2019, a package arrived at the LAPD headquarters addressed to Detective Marcus Delgado, who had since retired. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. The note was brief. You only found half the truth. The hotel has more secrets than you know. Marino wasn't the first, and Rosales wasn't working alone. Check the foundation. The USB drive contained architectural blueprints of the Cecil Hotel, dated 1926, showing tunnels and sublevels that didn't appear in any modern records. Red X marks had been drawn over 3 locations beneath the building. Detective Delgado forwarded the evidence to the current task force, but by the time they obtained permission to excavate, the building had been completely remodeled. Whatever secrets lay beneath the Cecil Hotel were now buried under concrete and new construction, lost forever. Martin Rosales died in prison in 2021 from a heart attack, taking his remaining secrets to the grave. David Marino's case remains open, though no new leads have emerged in over a decade. As for Elisa Lam, her family held a private funeral in Vancouver, Canada. Her blog posts and photographs from her final journey remain online, a digital memorial to a young woman whose life was cut short by a perfect storm of mental illness, predatory evil, and impossible circumstances. The official cause of death remains accidental drowning. But those who know the full story, those who read the case files and watched the unedited footage, know the truth is far darker. Elisa Lam didn't just die at the Cecil Hotel. She walked into a trap that had been set long before she ever arrived, in a building that had spent nearly a century collecting the broken, the vulnerable, and the lost. And somewhere out there, if the anonymous package is to be believed, the full story of what happened in the shadows of the Cecil Hotel still waits to be uncovered. Some mysteries are never truly solved. Some buildings never truly let go of their dead. And some secrets are buried so deep that even the truth can't set them free.